Imagine a river trapped inside a rock. It wants to flow, spread out, touch the world, but finds no way out. The pressure builds inside until the rock begins to crack. That's what you feel, isn't it? An invisible crack within you. There are days when it feels like you're going to explode, but you don't know why. Your chest tightens, your throat closes. Your soul begins to bleed from a place you can't even locate. And when the tears come, if they come, you feel ashamed because no one understands. And you even begin to feel like you're losing control. But what if this symptom isn't a breakdown, but rather a cold? What if this nameless pain is the beginning of a spiritual process that almost no one sees? What if what seems like weakness is actually the first sign of your mission? What you feel is not an illness, it is soul in motion. It's the breaking of an ancient silence that you've always carried, perhaps even before you were born. In this video, we'll reveal why the chosen ones live this symptom in silence, and why it was never a mistake, but a sacred code trying to wake you up. If this touches something inside you, consider subscribing and liking this video. Sometimes a simple gesture helps this content reach those who also need to be understood. There comes a moment when something starts to tighten inside, a weight that builds slowly, as if an invisible dam were about to break, but without knowing why. It's a silent discomfort that settles in the body, especially in the chest and throat, as if an emotion were alive and demanding release. But there are no words, just a strange urge to get away from it all, or simply collapse. It's not sadness, at least not in the usual sense. It's more like something is trying to get out of place, as if the soul carries a burden no one else sees. Often, this manifests itself in silence, a silence full, dense, charged with some truth that has yet to be spoken. And when you try to understand it with your mind, it fails, because what's happening isn't logical. It doesn't come from reason. Maybe you try to justify it with fatigue, with stress, with the hustle and bustle of life. But deep down, something tells you it's not that. This symptom has no apparent cause. It appears in the middle of a trivial conversation, just before bed, when looking at an old photo, or even without any visible trigger. It's as if the body has a life of its own and begins to implode with emotion. The feeling is one of overflowing, but of what? When the tears come, if they come, they carry no explanation. They just come, like a rain no one predicted. You try to contain them, rationalize, hold on tight, but your body seems to know more than you. It cries what you haven't yet understood, and so sometimes everything feels like a collapse, as if you're going crazy. But it's not madness, and it's not weakness either. This symptom, which many call imbalance, may be precisely its point of contact with something much greater, an ancestral memory, a spiritual lament, a profound calling that breaks the surface of ordinary life and begins to manifest itself like this, illogically, without warning, without control, but with force. And when no one understands, you begin to doubt, am I weak, too sensitive, am I sick? But what if this symptom is precisely the sign of what you're feeling, what everyone has learned to numb? What if what's going through you is exactly what the chosen ones come into the world to translate? Spiritually sensitive people don't just feel, they absorb. They walk through the world as if they had an invisible antenna tuned to other people's suffering, to unspoken emotions, to energies no one else notices. This isn't weakness, it's refined perception. It's a soul that came into the world with heightened senses, not just to survive, but to transform. So when something is out of alignment inside or out, the body responds, and it often responds with tears. But these are no ordinary tears. They are tears that come from far away, from within, from before, as if the body were exhaling everything that has been stored for years or generations. This crying, which seems sudden and without reason, is the way the soul of a sensitive person tries to release what the world has not allowed to be felt. When others ask for silence, the body screams. When everyone demands rationality, the soul delivers pure, untranslated emotion. It's not that the person doesn't know how to control it, it's that they learned from an early age to carry too much. And when this burden exceeds the limits of what can be borne, it becomes a symptom, an emotional breakdown. But the truth is that the breakdown is just the cry of something trying to be born. Sensitivity is not a flaw, it is a spiritual tool, a gift that, when denied, turns into pain. The world teaches us to harden, to block, to contain, but the sensitive soul came to dissolve, to release, to reconnect. And this crying without reason is, in fact, a form of reconnection that escapes conscious control. That's why it manifests in people like you, because only those who feel deeply are able to embrace the hidden layers of the invisible, and only those who embrace the invisible are able to heal in themselves and in others. This is the pain of those who came to transform. But it's also a sign that something greater has already begun. It all starts subtly, a restlessness here, a tear there, unexplained insomnia. Little by little, what was once just a sensitivity transforms into a constant state of internal tension. The body begins to react, the mind doesn't understand, and the heart just feels. It's at this point that many begin to think there's something wrong with them, and that's when the gift disguises itself as illness. The soul begins to awaken, but since we haven't been taught to deal with the spirit signals, we interpret this process as an imbalance. The fear of losing control, of not being normal, begins, and this fear fuels the pain even more. When a chosen one's soul awakens, the ego enters into conflict. It tries to protect, label, medicate, silence. And in this effort to contain the invisible, symptoms emerge. Real symptoms, felt in the body, but whose root lies elsewhere. And the most common of these is one that no one understands, not even those who experience it, crying for no reason. This is where we give a name to what was once just a sensation. The symptom that so many try to erase is precisely this sudden crying fit, without apparent cause. But it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's the soul's alarm. It's the moment when the inner being begins to expand and the body doesn't know how to handle this transition. Tears, at this point, are not a sign of weakness. They are a symbol of overflow. When the old no longer fits and the new has not yet arrived, the soul manifests itself in this way, with leaks of emotion, with noises of the invisible. The body mourns what the spirit can no longer silence, and this is frightening because we have been taught to see crying as a mistake, as a failure, as a breakdown. But the collapse is only the beginning. Every journey of true awakening passes through this chaos. It's the crisis before true rebirth, and as painful as it may seem, it's at this point that the gift begins to be revealed. Because what's breaking isn't you. It's the shell that prevented you from being born into your true self. When symptoms begin to appear, the world rushes to give them a name: anxiety, disorder, depression, hyperactivity. The problem is that often the name comes before the listening, and those who feel it start to be treated as someone who needs to be fixed and not understood. The outside gaze, however well-intentioned, ends up creating an invisible prison, that of those who begin to believe they are fragile, broken, and wrong. But not everything that hurts is an illness, and not all crying needs to be stopped. Some crying isn't a breakdown, it's a birth, a process of inner birth. But when diagnosed based on symptoms rather than history, the chosen one enters a dangerous process, denying what they feel to fit into what others understand. The greatest pain doesn't come from what one feels. It comes from the loneliness of not being believed, from the emptiness of explaining and no one understanding. And over time, this lack of external validation turns into self-effacement. The person begins to shut down, to smile on the outside, to strive to appear okay, until their soul enters a state of spiritual freezing. Many chosen ones live like this for years, functioning, producing, socializing, but disconnected from themselves. The tears that were once rejected now transform into a dangerous silence. And this silence, little by little, extinguishes the spark that made the soul vibrate. All in the name of appearing healthy, all in the name of being accepted. But the price of acceptance can be the loss of self. When the external diagnosis imposes itself, the internal mission recedes. And the most tragic thing is that the symptom was, in fact, a map, a portal, a sign. And by trying to erase this sign, the chosen one distances themselves from the very thing they came into the world to reveal. Therefore, the danger is not just in being misunderstood. The greatest danger is start to misinterpret yourself. When the world labels you, and you accept that label without question, you run the risk of spending your entire life trying to cure yourself from what was actually your greater sensitivity and its greatest strength. Carl Jung said that what is not brought to consciousness returns as destiny. In other words, everything that is not looked at repeats itself. It transforms into pain, into a symptom, into a repressed emotion. And the crying that the chosen one feels, the one that comes suddenly, without visible cause, is often the language of the unconscious trying to break the veil of inner silence. For Jung, tears symbolize something deeper. They represent the shattering of the persona, the social mask we wear to survive, when the ego can no longer maintain coherence between what we show and who we are. The unconscious manifests itself, and it does so not with words, but with emotions. Crying, in this sense, is not a sign of collapse, but of contact, a rare, powerful contact with the most forgotten layers of the soul. When tears arise for no apparent reason, they are often hidden contents, shadows, traumas, inherited pain, trying to emerge and be integrated. And that's where the chosen one's journey differs. They're not just crying for themselves, they're crying for their lineage, for their ancestors, for memories they haven't even experienced, but carry in their bodies, in their energy, in their psyche. The collective unconscious, as Jung said, pulses within us. And some, the most sensitive, hear this pulse more intensely. This symptom, often confused with emotional instability, is actually an individuation process. It's the beginning of an inner realignment, where the soul begins to free itself from the shackles imposed by the unconscious, familial, cultural, and religious. And it hurts, because being whole hurts. Reuniting the pieces of the soul requires going through tears that don't ask for permission. For Jung, the soul speaks in symbols, and perhaps the most powerful symbol of awakening is precisely the tear. Because it dissolves what the ego tries to hold back. It delivers what the unconscious can no longer contain. And in the chosen one, this tear is no small thing. It carries generations. It carries stories. It carries the call. There are pains so intimate they seem like a mistake. But what if they are a signature? What if this symptom, this silent, uncontrollable crying that arrives like a tide and overflows without asking permission, is in fact a seal of one who carries a mission, a soul sent to feel what others don't, to translate the invisible, to open paths where there was only silence. The chosen one doesn't feel for nothing. They feel first, they feel more, they feel deeply. Your sensitivity is the tool with which you touch the world. But at the beginning of the journey, this same sensitivity feels like a burden, because the mission hasn't yet been named, the gift hasn't yet been accepted, and the pain, because it's not understood, feels like punishment. But it's not a punishment, it's a sign. Crying doesn't come to break you, it comes to remind you. It marks the exact point where the soul begins to say, enough is enough, I can't keep quiet anymore. Oh, and in that moment, the true calling begins. Not the one that comes from outside, but the one that arises from within, in the darkness, in the pain, in the tear that falls without explanation. Some souls came with greater tasks. They came to break cycles, transmute patterns, free stories. But to do so, they needed to be born more open, more sensitive, more vulnerable. and that's why they feel more. The symptom, in this case, is a sign of spiritual enlistment. Pain is not random. It is part of the preparation. Every tear carries a message. Every breakdown, an adjustment. Every feeling of something is wrong with me is actually an echo of there is something greater calling me. The symptom is not the end. It is the beginning. A coded code of the soul, which only the chosen can decipher when they stop running from what they feel. And it's at this point that everything changes. When the chosen one understands that their pain isn't a failure but a compass, they begin to walk differently, with more truth, with more presence, and with the certainty that what almost destroyed them was just life trying to awaken them to who they truly are. When the chosen one decides to no longer silence their feelings, a journey begins, and this journey is neither easy nor quick. It is a process of disintegration of the old identity, where what has been learned conflicts with what is awakening. It is no longer possible to fit in, or pretend, or smile on the outside while crying on the inside. The soul demands truth. Along this path, the symptom persists, sometimes even intensifying, but now it is heard, it is welcomed, and little by little it transforms into language. What once seemed merely a collapse now appears as a code, as a sign, as a path. It's as if the soul is saying, yes, it hurts, but I'm taking you home. Those who go through this process begin to see the world through different eyes, and that's frightening, because nothing seems normal anymore. Superficial conversations become tiresome. Automated tasks lose meaning, and the old comfort zone begins to feel like a prison. It's a sign that the soul is growing and the body is trying to keep up. The chosen one who does not deny the call enters sacred territory, that of inner reconstruction. He learns to mourn with honor, to feel with awareness, to fall and rise again whole. He understands that pain did not come to punish him, but to refine him, to remind him who he is and why he came. This journey requires courage, because it involves loss, distancing, isolation, but it also reveals a strength that was hidden, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a presence that can't be bought. It can be cultivated, and all of this arises precisely in the place that once seemed like failure, the symptom. Those who do not deny the call do not emerge unscathed. They emerge transformed. What was a tear becomes language. What was a symptom becomes direction. And what was loneliness becomes a mission. Because those who remain steadfast in the center of their own pain discover one day that they were being shaped to be a home for themselves and for others. There comes a moment when the chosen one stops asking, "Why me?" and starts asking, "What for?" And that's when the turning point happens, because they understand that the wound wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The tears they hid for so long, the tears they tried so hard to contain, now become testimony. They don't just feel, they understand. And by understanding, they begin to illuminate. Pain doesn't disappear overnight, but it shifts. Before, it weighed heavily. Now, it guides. Because those who have crossed their own desert carry a light that can't be learned from books. It's the light of those who have felt it in their skin, in their heart, in their spirit, and so they have the authority to embrace the pain of others, without judgment, without haste, without fear. That symptom, which once seemed madness, reveals itself as a tool. A tear becomes a compass. Discomfort becomes an impulse. Sensitivity, once a source of shame, becomes a bridge between worlds. The chosen one understands that it was precisely their pain that opened their ear to the invisible, and this ear is sacred. Carl Jung said that what we face transforms us, but what we avoid imprisons us. When the chosen one stops avoiding what they feel and starts embracing it, what was once a prison becomes a portal. And within this portal, something new is born, the possibility of being a light for others, still in the dark. The wound becomes a beacon when you understand it wasn't the end of your story, It was the beginning of a calling. When you stop hiding and start sharing, the symptom gains a voice. It becomes a message, healing, encounter. The cry that no one understood before now comforts other hearts. And that is the true role of the symptom. Push you towards the truth you tried to ignore, not to punish you but to awaken you. And awakening hurts, but it also frees. And in your case, there's no going back to sleep. You've been called. And when the soul answers, it's never the same again. Some pains didn't come to destroy you. They came to reveal you. They came to break through old layers, open internal passages, and release what had been trapped for too long. The symptom you tried so hard to hide was, in fact, a sign of life asking for entry. It wasn't weakness, it was sensitivity. And sensitivity in this hardened world seems like a disease. But in chosen souls, it's a mission. The tear you felt ashamed to shed was perhaps the only truth your body had the courage to express. Don't erase it. Don't silence what awakens you. You weren't called to fit in. You were called to remember, to feel, to transform. The world needs souls like yours, who don't run from pain, who don't get lost in the noise, who can hear what the spirit is trying to say in the silence of the symptom. Maybe no one has told you this before, but you are not alone. There are many like you, awakening, feeling, rebuilding. And if this video resonated with you, then we are already connected. Share in the comments what touched you most. Sometimes your written pain may be just what another heart needed to read today. And if you want to continue this journey with us, consider liking and subscribing. This space was made for those who feel what the world still doesn't know how to name.